Good evening, everyone. Sarah, I think you're going to enjoy this presentation. As many of you know from some of my prior speeches, for about 15 years at various stages of my life, I have been very involved in community theater. First in Queens when I was about 16 years old to about the time I was 28. Then I raised my kids for a couple of years and didn't have time to go to rehearsals 3 nights a week. But when I was about 40, I joined the Northport Community Theater and did about 6 years of theater there. Then work got busy and I joined Toastmasters and I can perform at Toastmasters. But tonight, I'm going to do a longer version of a speech that I gave once before that was only 7 minutes called Great Moments in Community Theater. Those times, if you're involved in community theater, you know that things don't always go exactly right. So see, these are some of my favorite stories. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, guests, before I begin, let me give you the backstory. When I was about 10 years old, I fell in love with magic. And by the time I was 13 or 14, I was doing magic shows. I didn't even ask for money. I just wanted to get in front of people and perform. But occasionally I got paid. When I was 16, my cousin, Jean, who's about the same age as me, she was involved in our church theater group, the St. Matthias Drama Society in Ridgewood, Queens. And she came up to me and said, Kevin, we're having our Christmas party in December. Would you be willing to do a magic show? And I said, oh, that sounds great. So I went and did a magic show. Now, most of the people in the group knew me because I was also very involved in the folk group. From about the age of 15, I was playing guitar and singing in the folk group. So they knew I could sing. So after the magic show, the director comes up to me and says, in January, we're auditioning for The Sound of Music. And we really need young men. Would you be willing to do it? I know you can sing. And I said, okay. But I was a little bit shy, but my mother said, I'll go down with you. And we both tried out. And sure enough, I got the part of Ralph, the delivery boy who falls in love with the oldest daughter, Liesel, and sings, you are 16, going on 17, and eventually becomes a Nazi. And my mother got the part of Frau Schmidt, the housekeeper. Now, this was my first time performing in front of people. If any of you have ever done this before, and this is what Toastmasters is all about, it gets rid of that anxiety that you have. Yes, I could sing, and yes, I could memorize the lines. But when I got up during rehearsals to do the part, it was as if somebody tied lead weights onto my hands, and I was just standing there like this. And I guess the director thought, he's eventually going to break the habit. He's going to see that everybody else actually moves their arms. I did. So it was about 2 weeks before showtime, and the director actually sat down and went through every line and told me what I should do with my hands, especially during the song. You know, now look like you're holding a glass of wine to her. Now do this. And I just memorized what I had to do. Luckily, that didn't last too long. By the time I did my second show and I got the part that was more of a character part, I got a little bit less inhibited. And I started to realize that the way you really become a good actor is just to have no inhibitions. You just get up on stage and do the goofiest things. And when you think you're really over the top, that's when people are really enjoying it. So let's tell you when certain things didn't go exactly right. The one thing that every actor fears is being out on stage, finishing a scene and delivering their lines and expecting something to happen. Like another character is now supposed to make an entrance, or the doorbell is supposed to ring, or the phone is supposed to ring, and it doesn't happen. And now you're out on stage. Now remember, you're an actor. You rely on the writer writing the words for you. You don't know how to write words. But when somebody doesn't make an entrance, you've got to make something up. So I was doing a production of Guys and Dolls, and the gentleman playing Sky Masterson got stuck out on stage. The general was supposed to come in, and the general was nowhere to be found. Now you start making stuff up because you just can't stand there saying nothing. And you make up usually the most banal conversation, like, you know, whoa, nice weather we're having. You know, the kind of conversation that you make up in real life sometimes that means nothing. And then eventually what you do is you find some excuse to go over to a door or a window and open it up and look out and say, I think the general is coming. And then when you stick your head out, you go to the backstage people, where is the general? I'm going to kill her, get her out here. And eventually the general makes her entrance. And you feel maybe that time was about maybe a minute, not even a minute. It could have been 30 seconds. It feels like an hour and a half to you. But the good thing that you have to remember when you do theater is the audience doesn't have a script in their hand. So 90% of the time when you screw something up, they don't even know that you screwed it up and they don't even notice it. The play goes on, the general comes in, the scene continues. Whoops. Now, it's bad when you're waiting for somebody to make their entrance. But what's even worse is when you realize you're supposed to be on stage and you're not there. And that happened to me only one time. I was playing Professor Harold Hill in a production of The Music Man. And I had just finished Trouble, right? You know, you got trouble, my friends. Now the next scene, because they were doing a big scene change, the curtain closed, and we were supposed to play the next scene on the stairs in front of the stage. And Marion, the librarian, who was the love interest, was sitting there. I'm backstage after the song, I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I'm realizing it's kind of quiet, nothing's happening. I'm like, what's supposed to be happening now? And I peek out of the stage and I see Marion there and I realize, oh, I'm supposed to be out there. Now the problem is I was supposed to be out there from in front of the stage. The curtain is closed. I'm behind stage. I can't wait. I have to go. Here's the problem. The distance between the edge of the stage and the curtain in real life was about 3 inches. So as I start to walk out, I'm realizing that there's a good chance I'm going to lose my balance and fall off the stage. But somehow I tightrope walked across the stage, got to Marion, and the show went on. Problems resolved. Now, the actors are the people that you see. But there's a whole bunch of ancillary characters that do things backstage, like build the scenery, move the scenery, set up the props. There's a person there with a book in case you forget a line to be able to feed you a line. I was doing one production of Oklahoma. I was luckily not playing the lead, Curly, but the gentleman playing the part of Curly is out on stage doing a scene in kind of like a house with a wooden potbelly stove that the crack company behind had cobbled together from wood. At one point, he is supposed to sit down on the stove. Well, it worked almost every night except the final night. He went to sit on the stove. Luckily, he realized it was not holding him. He jumped up, the stove fell apart, but it didn't just fall apart. It fell apart like one piece at a time. The longest amount of time to make the audience start giggling and laughing. But you know what? You always have to be prepared to ad-lib and break character. So he just looked at it, he looked at the audience and said, they sure don't make them like they used to. And the audience burst out into laughter and everybody had a great time. Let's talk about stage crew. The people who man the stage crew and make sure the scenery is set up and the props are in place, there's a reason that they do that. And the reason is most of them are terrified to actually be on stage. They want to be involved in a theater, but they just don't want to get in front of an audience. So my first show, as you remember, was The Sound of Music. Years later, at St. Sebastian's Church in Woodside, I played Captain Von Trapp in a production. And then more years later, in my 40s, at the Northport Theater, I played Uncle Max. So I've been in 3 different roles. If I ever do the show again, I'm playing the Mother Abbess. That's the part that I want. Climb every mountain. I'm prepared for it. But in this one, I was Uncle Max. And there's a scene where we're out on stage getting ready, and they set up the stage. I'm supposed to be sitting at a table with a tea set in front of me, and then the lights come up. In one performance, the stage crew person, everything is set up except the tea set. The stage crew person is coming out, and the lighting director brought the lights up a little bit too soon. They were 2 steps on stage, the lights came up, They looked like a deer in the headlights. They didn't know what to do. What they should have done is they should have taken 2 more steps, set the tray down, walked off. Instead, the lights came on. They looked like this. They tossed the tea set up toward the table and ran off. The tea set went in every direction, and it was made out of metal, so it was clanking all over the place. Everybody in the audience is laughing a bit. I get up, I pick it all up, I set it down, I make believe I pour myself a cup of tea, and I look around and say, "Tea, anybody?" Which got another laugh, and we went on. Now, sometimes things just don't work the way you expect them. But sometimes, and I don't really get this because I never did this to anybody, but I did work with a few people who thought it might be fun to pull a practical joke on you as you were doing a show. So I was doing a production of Brigadoon, and I was playing the lead, Tommy, and a good friend of mine was playing my sidekick, who's actually the character name I don't remember. The opening scene, we're lost in the Highlands of Scotland. And the first scene is me opening up a map, and we're trying to figure out where we are and get our bearings. Well, my friend Jerry decided on opening night that he would put a rather lewd picture of a woman inside the map, so that as I opened it up, to see what my reaction would be. So now you have to remember, this was community theater at a local church. Opening night, all the priests in the church were in the front row. I did keep my calm. I saw the picture. I continued the scene. After the scene, I went out and I lambasted Jerry for about 5 minutes, saying, "What if I opened the map the wrong way?" And that picture was facing the audience. He still thought it was funny. This one I called the boomerang effect. I was doing a production of Plaza Suite at a group called the Parkside Players in Forest Hill, Queens. It was the first season. I was actually one of the founding members of that group, and this was the first season and one of the first shows we did. And it's 3 one-act plays that all take place in the same room at the Plaza Hotel. My scene, I was playing a Hollywood producer who invites his high school sweetheart back. They haven't seen each other in years, with the kind of the intention of seducing her. In the opening scene, I'm running around getting the room ready. I come out of the bathroom, I'm cleaning things up. I pick up a towel, I'm cleaning around, and then the doorbell rings. And now I don't know what to do. I've got the towel in my hand. So the direction was, I just throw it out the window of the Plaza Hotel. On closing night, the director of our scene decided it would be funny to toss it back in. And it was funny. The audience was hysterical, but I was already going to the door to open it up, and I heard this huge laugh, and I had no idea, what are they laughing? First thing I did was, I checked my, okay. I didn't really know until after the show was over what had actually happened. We talked about forgetting lines. The worst thing is when you're on stage and somebody forgets a line, and usually you can help them out. Because most of the time dialogue is back and forth and you know what the scene is about. I'm supposed to say this, you're supposed to say this. Occasionally you're in a scene where somebody has a very long monologue. And on this night, we were doing this comedy show called The Butler Did It. And I was playing kind of a Philip Marlowe, a Sam Spade, kind of Humphrey Bogart character. And each of us was a famous detective. There was one person who was Sherlock Holmes. There was Nick and Nora Charles from The Thin Man. And the main lead, who invited us all to this island where we're all going to be killed off one by one, had a very long monologue. And in the middle of the monologue, she just drew a blank and she didn't know what to say. So first one person jumped in with a few lines, and then the gentleman playing Sherlock Holmes really took over. And he just jumped in. It was almost like he was a playwright. He was going on and on like, well, I think that possibly the murderer is this, and he's going on and on. And after about 2 minutes of him doing this, and poor Irene not knowing her line yet, he just turns to my character and says, "Chandler, what do you think?" I'm like, "What are you doing this to me for?" It's like, so I just tossed it right back to him. I said, "I really have no idea, but I like your ideas. Why don't you elaborate on that a little bit?" Ultimately, somebody got close enough to the window to hear what the line was and fed it to us, and we continued along our way. And like I said earlier, nobody knew the difference. We talked to the audience afterwards. They didn't even know that there had been a problem. But some nights, things go so badly. In that same production of Brigadoon, I have to tell you, the director was a little unorganized. And we realized that we had been rehearsing Act One for about 2 months. And we were 2 weeks away from opening night, and we had not run Act Two even once. So we threw Act Two together in about 2 weeks. And in Act Two, for those of you who don't know Brigadoon, Brigadoon is this mythical place in the Highlands of Scotland that only comes to life 1 day a year. And time, to them, only 1 day has gone by. They're still back in the 1600s. But when they appear, anybody can see them. And these two guys stumble upon Brigadoon. Now, the deal is that if anybody leaves Brigadoon, the spell is broken. Well, there's one malcontent character, Harry, who's very upset about this, and he wants to leave Brigadoon. And in Act Two, he finally, just goes crazy, and he runs off into the woods, and he's going to leave. And the whole group of people go tearing after him. And eventually, somebody comes on stage and tells what Harry's fate was. They explain that as they were chasing him, he fell off a hill and hit his head, and Harry is dead, and they bring his body back on. Well, one night, one of the characters in that scene literally skipped an entire page of dialogue. He skipped his line and started delivering a line that was after they brought Harry back. So that night, Harry ran off into the woods. And as far as the audience is concerned, they never knew what happened to him because they skipped an entire page of dialogue. So I think to myself, that audience probably to this day says, whatever happened to that guy? Did he find the Starbucks in the woods? And he never came back. Those are a little bit harder to explain away. But the one that I remember the most is doing a production of Count Dracula. And the gentleman who played Dr. Van Helsing had a really hard time memorizing his lines. I mean, really hard time. It was the dress rehearsal the night before opening night, and he was still calling for a line occasionally. So a good friend of mine was playing opposite me, and we were both saying, what are we going to do? He's got so many. He tells the whole story of the vampire lore because he's the one who figures out that the next door neighbor, Count Dracula, is a vampire. So he's got all the exposition that explains what the whole story is about. And we're thinking he's never going to be able to get through this. He's got long sections of dialogue. On opening night, he's perfect. He's not missing a line. He's delivering everything perfectly. And at one point, my blocking was to go behind the couch and stand behind him. Now, he had taken a book off of the shelf, and he's explaining vampire lore. And as I look over his shoulder, the script is pasted into the book. So I thought that was a very inventive way to make sure that you would not forget your lines. And it definitely made my friend and I feel much more comfortable that we weren't going to have to cover for him. The last one that I had the most fun with, the last show that I did about 15 years ago, was The Wizard of Oz. And I got to play the Cowardly Lion. It was probably my favorite part, next to Pseudolus, and a funny thing happened on the way to the forum, but that'll be another discussion. One night, you know the scene because everybody knows the Wizard of Oz. They all go to the wizard and they're going to ask for what they want. And the wizard is like, how dare you ask for this? And eventually the Cowardly Lion steps forward. And I was in full makeup. My wife made me a lion outfit. I had this beautiful lion wig that I bought. I had makeup prosthetics on to make me look like a lion. And I stepped forward and he says something, lion. And then I'm just supposed to go, oh, and I fall over and faint. Well, one night, as I fainted, as my head hit the floor, I felt every bobby pin holding the wig on pop simultaneously. So I knew when I get up, this wig is no longer on. And eventually, I think the lion says something. What did he say? What did he say? When he stands up, and I stood up and I had one hand here and the wig started to fall this way and I'm adjusting it and I could hear the audience laughing. And finally I get it adjusted enough to get behind stage to get it fixed. And I have a line, and when I stepped forward, I said, "My goodness, he scared me so much, I flipped my wig." And it got a huge laugh. So sometimes, even though you don't want to break character, sometimes it makes a lot of sense to break character. Those are all the stories that I have, but what I really want to leave you with is, if you've never tried doing community theater, I know you have, but if you've never tried it, I can't tell you what a great experience it is. It is really the most, next to Toastmasters, it's the most shared experience that you'll have with a group of people, because you realize no matter what the people are in charge of, you rely on the director to watch you and tell you what you're doing wrong and how you can improve. It's like an evaluator here at Toastmasters. You rely on your other actors to make sure they have their lines memorized so that you don't stand out on stage flabbergasted. You rely on the scenery and the crew to get things set up, to have all of your props ready, to make sure that the stove doesn't collapse when you sit on it. And I don't care what project you've worked on work, all projects have deadlines, but there is no deadline that is stricter than opening night. You can't miss it. On opening night, you are going to be standing in front of an audience performing this play, whether you like it or not. And that might sound scary, but it's exhilarating and it's fun. And I think I just convinced myself I should go try out for a show again and do this one more time. Mr. Toastmaster?